Hey guys, what's up? This is gonna be my first video on the new Shadowverse game here, Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. I picked up this game about a week ago and started playing it. If you guys didn't know, I played the original game when it first came out, I don't know, like 8 years ago. And this one just came out a week ago, so decided to go ahead and pick it up, try out and play a bit of the game here. Right now I'm sitting around C0, I forget what rank I am, like Ruby or something like that. I dropped a little bit because I was playing Ramp Dragon, which wasn't doing super well, but the deck I want to talk about today is going to be on my mid-range sword deck. And yeah, so I kind of want to just break it down, talk about it a little bit, and hopefully you guys can learn something. This deck's been doing pretty well. I'm on a win streak with it right now, and I kind of want to talk about how the card choices and essentially how to play this particular deck. Now the deck itself, you don't have too many legendaries, but you do have about 7 legendaries, which I think is a good, pretty expensive, but it's, 2 of the legendaries, Livia, it's just can be used across multiple decks, so it's not like a huge commitment. Then you have a couple gold cards here. The gold cards aren't that crazy either. You have maybe 8, 10 gold cards, which is a lot, but at the same time, if you've been opening packs, you probably should have pulled a couple of these gold cards. But yeah, let's talk about the deck here, right? So I'm just gonna go from like the very beginning to kind of the end, kind of explain what each card does and whatnot, right? Okay, so you got your 1/1 here, Quick Blader. He's namely just there for early damage. So actually, let's talk about how you should pilot this deck, right? So this deck is a mid-range style deck, meaning that you're not gonna be able to out aggro your opponent in the first couple of turns. First couple of turns are essentially just setting up. If they're putting out stuff to trade with you, or they're putting out things to challenge your board, you can sometimes trade, sometimes you don't even need to trade, depending on what matchup you are. You can just go face. And face is namely where we're trying to aim for. We're just trying to bring them down to a low enough number where we can then finish them off. And so a lot of the early cards in this deck is just putting bodies onto the board, having your opponent use their spells to clear it, using their bodies to clear it. And sort of in the mid-range game here, you're kind of buffing up yourself, right? You have a big board, you're just buffing yourself up, giving your followers 1/1, giving your followers barrier, and finally you have your sort of your finisher over here, where Albert's gonna be your finisher, and maybe Geno. But yeah, let's talk about each of the cards here. Starting back with Quick Blader. So the reason why we're playing Quick Blader is early damage, Storm, and the fact that he works really well with if he gets buffed, right? And he's for 1 mana. Oftentimes you'll drop like you'll drop her and you're gonna super evolve her on like turn 5 or something like that, right? So if you have 1 extra mana, you can play a Quick Blader and she'll buff the Quick Blader to a 2/2. So 1 mana 2/2, pretty good. Same idea with Amelia, or if you have Olivia. If you drop Olivia and you have 2 extra play points off of Olivia, if you have 2 Quick Bladers, you can play one of them and then super evil Olivia, and then Olivia will then super evil Quick Blader, and that's a 4/4 right there with Storm. So yeah, Quick Blader, good early game. Late game it combos, or late to mid game it combos well with Amelia. If you need just, you want to give Quick Blader barrier, combos with either Iron Crown if you're buffing up your board, or with another Zirconia here, or with Olivia if you want to super evil her, or you drop him down with Albert also. If Albert clears the board and you have a Quick Blader, that's easily 13 damage if you just need that 1 extra damage. So Quick Blader, pretty good there. Luminous Commander, what this card does is essentially whenever a token, I guess, right? Because officers in this, when they say officers, there's no cards that are actually officers in the deck. If you kind of look at Swordcraft, right, that's how to play the deck. Is you kind of think about, there's no actual cards that are officers in the deck. What officers are essentially are tokens. So like anything that summons a token monster, those are technically officers. So like a knight here is an officer, right? You have the sorry, Steel Clad Knight here, awesome officer. So if you think about it, it's basically anytime you summon a token, creature, or follower, she gets a +1/+1. And same thing early on, she is just a 1/1 damage. But late in the game, sometimes if you're playing, you combo her off. If you have her on the board already and you play something like Luminous Mage, summons 3 Steel Clad, so you buff her by 3 damage. So she does grow and she does potentially become more powerful if your opponent leaves this thing ignored, right? And I had that a few times where they would just ignore a 1/1, and then I would just play her if she's already on the board, or play Zirconia, summon 2 Knight copies, you know, give her a +1/+1, and then the 2 Knight copies gives her another +1/+1. So, you know, she easily grows pretty quickly depending on what cards you're playing, and she can get out of control if your opponent is just not respecting her. So, has 3 copies of her. Now Faildo here, or Phildo, however you pronounce his name, is kind of a Phil spot. No pun intended, but you can play anything, right? Here, some people like to play. Let me just go into deck edit here, right? So let me. Some people like to play Ruby. Some people like to play some other 2-drops like Dominal Fighter, or even Bell Ringer, right? And so the reason why I'm playing him is sometimes you just need to be able to remove stuff, and sometimes you just have extra evil points that you're not using, because in the deck's not very heavily reliant on evil. Like Dragon is very reliant on its evolution points, right? It needs its evolve points to gain more play points. It needs its super evolve to get special effects. In this deck, sure, there's a couple creatures or followers that use that evolution point. For the most part, we don't really care. That evolution point, the regular evolution point, is always going to be used on Zirconia if we can, right? Just being able to summon 2 Knights and giving +1/+1. However, sometimes we don't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury, and you need to control the board and remove it. Remove a big creature or something, either, you know, late game and whatnot. Phil kind of helps with that, because this deck doesn't have that much removal. If you look at the way I built this deck, your only form of removal is actually just your creatures. So if you make I should say followers, if you make your followers big enough, they can act as removal. And so we're not really playing any spells to remove anything. We're just playing a purely big creature deck that forces our opponent to trade into us. And sometimes if the trade is good on our end, then we'll trade, but otherwise we're just going face. So Phil is kind of that nice little niche spot. You can definitely play something else. I found 2 copies, pretty decent. Saw him when I need him. Didn't see him when I didn't need him. And even then, early game, sometimes you just drop him on turn 2 and you just swing into face with him. And most of the time, this card is kind of like a magnet for destruction. Your opponent's always going to try to kill this thing, either evil into killing it or wasting some sort of removal spell on him. That's perfectly fine. He's not that important to our deck. We're trying to go wide, so if they're spending points and removal spell on him, when we drop him on the board early game, that's perfectly fine. Coach Woman here, decent. It's just basically she's sticky, right? Because the one thing about Shadowverse Worlds Beyond is it's very hard to stick anything onto the board. The more I play this game, the more I feel like none of my followers ever last more than a turn on the board. There's just so much evolution going on. There's so many cards that just ping damage. There's puppets that just swing into your monsters and with rush for free, and they clear everything, right? So by having last words, you summon a knight, which means if they try to remove her early game, that's perfectly fine. You still have a body on the board, which then moving into your turn, your mid game, if you have crown or you have Zirconia, you can then just buff, evil her and buff the knight up to 2/2, and then just swing into face. So yeah, that's what she's pretty good for. You got the samurai guy here. Is it ignominious knight, samurai knight? I don't know how to really pronounce that word. But the idea here is he's just cheap removal late game. Early game, he's also decent removal. Like if they're playing any sort of follower that is gonna challenge your board, you can just remove that follower, so that they don't attack your weaker follower. So this one is just to use to protect your other followers. So if they have like a, let's say a 2/2, right, and you have 2 knights on the board, right, you could just use this guy to swing into their 2/2 to protect your 2 knights, and then hopefully the turn after that or so you can buff those knights or make them bigger or whatever, right? So the idea here is early game you're just using him to trade into small stuff. Late game you can use it to trade into their super evil, you know, cards that are going to be really hard to fight over. So for 2 mana, it's really I should say 2 play points. It's really good. Sorry if I mix up these words. I play too many card games and I kind of just forget which one I'm playing between sometimes, or the verbiage that you're supposed to use. Anywho, moving on, we have Lance Trooper here. Same idea. You're just putting bodies on the board. Her effect where it gives your followers rush is nice, but oftentimes it's not that useful because you're not really using your followers to trade into their followers unless you feel like you need to. Most of the time I would just play her, get a 1/1 plus her on the board, and then just pass turn. There are times where the rush helps, but most of the time you don't really care about the ability to give your knights or your officers rush as much. But yeah, she's there just to put bodies on the board. We have Warhound here, but basically, even though this is a 3-cost play point card, you're honestly playing this on turn 6, just because it's a really good card to push tempo, especially if they evo into like an 8/8 or something. You can play Warhound, send 2 of your hounds into their evo, kill it, and you still have a 4/2 on board. Or in some cases, maybe they went wide and they just have like a bunch of 1/1s or something like that, right? You could just play a hound, get 3 hounds, rush them all down. Your hound sticks around for a turn, perfect. Like you have 4/1 body on the board, and now they have to deal with it. So Hound of War is just a good think of it as a very basically a 12 damage removal spell for 6 man for 6 play points, right? So you can send 12 damage anywhere to any follower you want, right? It helps clear like maybe Bane stuff, helps clear out ward. Basically, it allows you to set up for a turn where you are going to be able to maybe deal direct damage with Storm or something like that, or just clear out anything that they have without using an evil point. And that's the best thing about this card. It's just like for 6 mana or 6 play points, you are essentially getting a 12/6, I guess, worth of stats to just kind of send anywhere that you need. And most of the time 2 hounds will kill any super evil follower, and then the last hound you can send wherever or just keep it on the board, just deal damage the turn after that. Okay, then you have Valses here, or the Valse, I guess. So this card is interesting in the sense that it's like 3 mana, deal 5 damage to any follower on the board. That's already a pretty good effect. Enhance, you give him ambush, means he can't be targeted by card effects or attacks, which is nice. However, they have non-targeting card effects or like a board wipe, he'll still die. So, but namely, I don't really use his enhance that much. I have better things to do with 6 mana or 6 play points. Generally, I'm usually playing maybe a Warhound, or I'm playing Amelia or something else. So I'm usually never ambushing him as much. So he's just basically a deal 5 damage, a 2/1 body most of the time. So he's still nice to remove like wards and other things that are like kind of annoying that you don't want to really attack into. But I don't think he's that strong of a card. He's still a good card, no doubt, but I don't necessarily think he's like, oh, you must play 3 of him or you have to play him. I play 2 copies of him. I just find that that's how much I liked. I never really cared to see him too early in the game. Never really cared to see him late game. He's definitely more of like a mid-range kind of card, because late game a lot of things are going to be more has more health than 5 damage can do to it. Yeah, most of the time he's like, if you think you can kill your opponent by giving him ambush, then sure, but if not, then he's an okay card. Iron Crown Valley, or Iron Crown Majesty here, fantastic card. Basically, this card allows you to go wide early game, put a bunch of knights and you know, steel-clad knights and whatnot, right? And ideally, you combo off with the evolution of her, right? If you stick this on the board and they don't clear it, and then the turn after that you evo with Zirconia, you're in business. You basically have so much that they have to deal with. It's really, really hard. And the only deck that typically can sort of deal with this is the Portalcraft with their dude, the artifact that does 3 damage to your followers. That's your main weakness of this deck. But even then, like, this deck goes wide really quickly, really easily. So it's like, even if they board wipe you, it's not the end of the world. You can easily rebuild your board, or even play it slower, you know, towards the late game to kind of control the board. But yeah, this card is good once, you know, early game you get your bodies on the board. Late game, if you have an established board, then you can just buff everything up, and that should generally be enough damage to end the game there. This is your best card to evo into. Otherwise, it's a vanilla, so you usually don't want to drop her on turn 4 with nothing to do. You want to save her until you get into your evolution turn, and then you evo her, you know, get a 6/6, get 2 more knights, and they're both 2/2s. So you, for 4, think of it, 4 play points and the evolution point, you get a total of 10 stats worth of power on the board, right? So you have a 6 and a 2/2, so pretty good there. And if you have any of these, right, you have I don't know, a quick blader or a coach or anything that's still surviving on the board, and she also buffs them, and then you just swing that into face and not have to worry too much. The idea is to let your opponent trade into you rather than you trading into your opponent, unless it's an aggro matchup where you feel like you're under threat of death. Then yes, you would want to trade, but otherwise, most of the time you're not really trading. Next off, Magnus here is pretty good in terms that she gets you a bunch of bodies on the board. Ideally, you combo this with Amelia, because you get like a total of 4 bodies on the board, and then if you have Amelia, you give each of those bodies barrier, and it becomes very, very difficult and annoying to remove your followers at that point. So yeah, she's really good. If you think about it, she's 5 play points for a total of 7, 9 worth of stats on the board, and it goes across, and it gives everything ward, which is really, really good. So you get a bunch of stats, you go wide, you give yourself a little bit of defense with ward. Stat wise, like, you know, it's really good for 5 play points, right? You get 7 damage or 7 power plus 9 health, so that's just really, really good. So fantastic card. Recommend playing 3 of her. Okay, so last off, let's talk about your late game cards, right? So obviously, Amelia, your deck is gonna run out of steam eventually, right? If you're playing against a deck that's or an opponent that's very good at just controlling the board, very good at just picking off anything that that you leave on the board. Yeah, Amelia is just there just to get you those cards that you need to maybe potentially end the game or to rebuild your board. Don't be afraid of her just dropping her on turn 6 and not super evoing her. You don't always need to evo her to get that barrier. That the super evo is completely optional on her. The fact that she's essentially a 3-drop, you think about it, right? Yeah, you can't play her on turn 3, but on turn 6, she's basically just 3 mana or 3 play points cost wise, draws you 2 cards, and then hopefully you can play something else with her. So what I like to do with her is, like, sometimes I'll play Amelia. I get my, you know, on, let's say it's turn 6. Yeah, if you play her on turn 6, even, right? Or not turn 6. If you play on turn 8, so if you have 8 play points, right? Think about this. You drop her, you get 3 play points back, so you go back to 5, right? And then if you have 5 play points and you have a mage, you drop the mage, make your board wide, and then you super evil her, and then you give everything barrier. and that just becomes ridiculously hard to deal with. So when you have Magnus and Amelia with 8 play points available, that's a combo that you can do right there. It just goes really wide, makes your board very, very sticky, and your opponent needs to somehow deal with it, or they just gonna die on the clapback. If they spend all their time trying to deal with this, then maybe you have you know, another evil point to just play Albert to finish them off. Same thing with Olivia here, right? Olivia, same idea with Amelia. It's just basically just you play her, you get some play points back, and then you draw some cards, because you know this deck has issues with card draw. You're playing really, really weak cards like Quick Blader and Luminous Commander, where it's not really trading into anything. You're very, very rarely trading up. You're always almost trading downwards. So which means your card advantage is going to be suffering, because you're not trading up, right? Trading up would mean you'll be up on power, you'll be up on card, but this deck trades very poorly most of the time. You would think it trade really well because you're making a bunch of 1/1 bodies and things like that, but you also have to think about your card economy. Your quality of your cards aren't going to be as good as most of your opponent's cards, but because of that, if they play anything like a 1-mana, Dragoncraft plays that dragon with a ping 1 damage, you lose a card, they're up a card already. Or in most cases they play Apollo, right? Apollo wipes out a bunch of your 1/1s, you're down on cards, you're down on bodies. And so what I found with this deck is that it really, really needs that draw power, especially late game. Early game, if you apply enough pressure and your opponent is just wiping you, okay, fine. Late game, you're dropping Olivia, you're dropping Amelia here, basically kind of draw you hopefully your few final cards to close out the game, and essentially that's what they're there for. So I highly recommend Amelia in this deck. Like I said early in the video, her super evil works really well with cards like Quick Blader, right? You get a 4/4 right there just with Amelia and her. Or you can make any of these things into another beefy creature or follower. Or sometimes you drop her with, I don't know, you could drop her on like if you have 10 play points, you can drop Amelia or Olivia with Magnus, and that way you have a bunch of protection there. You heal up a little bit, you super evil with Magnus, and you have a lot of stats to work with right there on the board. So that's an option there too. Next up, you have Albert here. So Albert, I feel, is a very tricky card to use. Yes, generally you want to save your super evil points for him, so that he's able to do 12 damage on turn 9. As he comes down, he blows up your opponent's wards and stuff like that. Then he attacks twice, and he can close out the game really quickly. So yes, that is his purpose. However, the way I've been playing this deck is that you actually don't even need him to win. Like, if you're playing this deck correctly and your opponent is not able to deal with your board and you're going really, really wide, you really don't need Albert that much. You just smack in face with a really wide board, and your opponent, unless they're playing Dragon or something where they have constant board wipe after board wipe, or even Puppet, right? They're just sending puppets into your board the entire time. They're eventually going to run out of puppets, and if you are just maximizing on how wide your board is, they will eventually run out of answers, right? And that's, at least from my play experience, I played maybe, I don't know, 5-10 games with this particular deck, but at least from my experience, that's how it generally goes. So you don't necessarily need Albert to finish the game. He is there as an option. And when your opponent plays against Swordcraft, it's kind of a mind game too. They are assuming that you have Albert, right? And they're assuming at turn 9, at any point in the game, they can immediately die to just you dropping Albert and super evoing him. So they'll play cautiously. They'll try to heal above 12. They'll put out wards. They'll do a bunch of weird stuff, right? And you can just bluff having Albert. Like, you don't even need him. You can just kind of deal with their board. You can play Geno. You can play your Amelias. You can play your Olivias. You can just kind of sit there and dirtle a little bit, make your opponent be like, shoot, he's gonna kill me next turn. Maybe he's not. but you're slowly just poking him down, right? To the point where you can just play Albert on even as a 5 cost, you'll eventually just be able to kill him with just Albert and a regular evolution, right? You don't even need to drop Albert on turn 9 or the enhanced version of Albert at that point. So, in my experience, you don't necessarily need Albert. You don't even need the what's this guy called? The Centurion guy. He's good because you can drop him a turn before Albert, but if your opponent's playing really well and they have a bunch of ward, or they have Orcus plus the, you know, the 1/6 ward guy with Bane, Centurion can't really beat through that. So that's the thing. So I don't think you really need this card. I mean, I've won plenty of games with him too, where they just don't have anything, and you go Centurion on 8, super evo him, and just, you know, do 10 damage there. Yes, that's possible, but most of the time I feel like if you're playing the mid-range game, then you should be able to control the board, and you should be able to just win based on your board state rather than trying to rely on a big finisher like Centurion or Albert. And the final card here is General, right? So General, same idea as the rest of your cards here. He's good in the sense that he can clear the board without wasting evolution points. So you can clear out I want to say like 90% of the super evil followers in the game with just him attacking once. If they have something a little bit bigger, then yes, you can attack twice into that creature or that follower. Him giving himself barrier means that he won't die to that to them unless they have like Bane or something like that. And then if they leave him alive on the board for a turn, then you can just attack twice for for 14 damage to the face. So I think General is definitely a fantastic card, but that's all you really need. Your top end should be around this part if you're playing mid-range. I know there's a couple other options that people do play. Some people play I don't have her yet. Some people play Amelia. Amelia is good, no doubt, but I feel like she kind of really has something that you know. You have Magnus that kind of already does something that Amelia does. Problem with Amelia is she can't combo into anything, right? Like with Magnus, you can at least combo with Amelia. Amalia, I guess this is Amalia, not Amelia. But yeah, Amalia here you can't really combo because she's just too expensive. She's 8 cost, and sometimes you have you already have bodies on the board, and so sometimes you don't get the full value if you play her. So let's say you have, I don't know, a 1/1 officer on the board. You play her, you're losing out on 1 Steel Knight. And that's the thing that you have to think about too, is that you're paying 8 mana for those stats, right? So you're paying 8 mana to essentially try to get about 14 power, 14 defense on the board. If you just have anything, you have any other follower on the board, then suddenly you're paying 8 mana for less stats. And I particularly didn't like that, right? I thought that was kind of bad. Where Luminous, it only summons 3 copies, so if you have something on the board already, that's perfectly fine. If not, you can play her and then play something else on top of her to enhance it. So maybe you play Amelia to enhance your Magnus board, so it doesn't totally she doesn't clog your board, where Amalia here clogs your board, and that's something you have to kind of think about, whether you want to risk clogging your board and not being able to do something else, or not being able to combo. Like, she's not a bad card, but I think the way, if you play this deck correctly, you won't need to get you won't need her, or you won't get to the point where you'll be able to play her effectively. So especially if you have her and you have like Geno in the same deck. Geno's already putting a bunch of knights onto the board when he attacks, and so by the time you get to turn 8, are you really gonna cast her with Geno on the board and 2 knights? I kind of doubt it, right? So while she's a good card, she doesn't quite necessarily work well with the deck if you're just going wide. So just be careful with that. If you choose to play her, she's fine, but I do think that you have some other options. I'd sooner play a new Albert over playing her. And even then, I don't think you really need 3 Alberts in this particular deck. Most of my games I won, like I said, I rarely won with Albert. I mostly won with just having a big board and being able to effectively control it. My opponent eventually running out of answers, and that's how I win. So, yeah, I think that is how the mid-range kind of deck should be played. But again, yeah, let me know how you guys, what you guys think. Overall, I think this deck has been pretty good. I'm still gonna try to learn, see any other tech cards I could play. Like the main thing here is Phil. He's kind of like optional. You can play him. You can play something else. But other than that, I think the rest of the deck is pretty solid. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. So that's all I got for you guys. I know it was kind of a long video and kind of went on a rant there, but hopefully you guys learned something, and I will catch you guys next time.